Welcome back to another panel here on Ink and Panels Day. We're back with another amazing panel, and for this panel, we're talking about the World Wide Web of webtoons. Not just webtoons on like the actual app called webtoons, but anywhere where you can read manga, comics, sequential art, graphic novels digitally. So that could be somewhere like Global Comics, that could be someone's personal website, Tapas, you name it, wherever there are places to be read webcomics, we're talking about those. We're also going to be addressing some other things within that realm. With me, you're probably already familiar with the gentleman below me, but we're going to go ahead and do some introductions again. So without further ado, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Well, nice to meet everyone. My name is Mina, or my artist name known as Gilly Boo, formerly known as Gilma 9005. I am a digital artist as well as a traditional one, and I dabble in animation personally, as well as adult comics. Yes. I've been doing it for quite some time. I have to say I've been drawing forever, but professionally, I've been doing it for about 7, 8 years now.
Oh, snap.
Yes.
And my name is Ayinde Hall. I'm the co-founder of Studio Maho. We do manga / comics and animation, and we also, sell various merchandise pertaining to our different IPs. So, yeah, I'm the writer for Blade Titans. I do the artwork for that series, and I also am the artist for God Punch, and I also have several other stories in the tank that are currently being written under the Studio Maho umbrella. So,
Isn't that the curse of being a creative? You always have millions of stories and just never enough time to work on them all.
oh, absolutely.
So both of you guys are in an amazing market. It's been talked about a little bit throughout the weekend, but webtoons, webcomics, it's definitely gone through a big boom over the last maybe 10 years or so. Of course, with the rise of apps like webtoons or webcomics. It's also kind of made itself as the kind of accessible gateway for a lot of creators. In you guys' opinion, why did you guys decide to post your comics digitally instead of maybe focusing on the traditional format of posting them in, of creating them and turning them into physical books?
For me, I think I always wanted somewhere for people to read my stuff when I was first starting out, and those kind of like almost like forum type sites where you could just post, your own stuff. I think there used to be some sites where before it was like Manga Magazine. I don't know if y'all remember Manga Magazine before it turned into like Ink Blazers, and then Ink Blazers was shut down, and then all these other ones popped up. Tapas has been around for a while. Um, but I used to actually post on like a website. I think it was called like Manga Raiders, and there was like really more of just like a forum, like threads. You could start a thread for your own series, and people could go read it over there, and stuff like that. So it was really just more of kind of like exposure. Um, it's a little bit easier that way, once the internet started to kind of really take off for people to actually read your stuff and to access it um, on anywhere, basically, from anywhere, from any device. Everybody's got phones nowadays. So that's kind of like the easiest access to anybody that's kind of smaller creator, I feel like. So yeah, I used to post my stuff on Manga Magazine, Ink Blazers, and now I think the way that it's so easy to have like your own website, like we use Squarespace to create our own website. We can upload our stuff directly. We did webtoons for a while, and webtoons is cool, but it's really if your format is more of I feel like manga style or comics and that like the reading style, it's not as good unless you're doing a traditional webcomic where it's straight up and down, long format. So we stopped doing webtoons and moved over to just having it embedded in our website. So
Yes. Well, I would agree with what he said as well. Doing it digitally gives you more exposure. It gives you the ability to have a wider audience. At least if you do it physically only, I would have to say, do a lot of like book fairs and stuff like that to get yourself out there. But if you do it digitally, I mean, everyone's kind of online. So it's much easier for people to be able to access and see even my comic. For example, I have my comic, I didn't mention this, but I do have my webtoons, Mutual Crush. It is on the actual webtoon platform, and I don't have it on my website, no, but I just have a fan page for it. But yes, I would say as well, yes, I have the comic up and down, as you said.
Mhm.
Yes, it is kind of difficult to make it that way, but I have to make it that way for the platform.
Right.
But yes, working with digital is much easier and more convenient, I think, as well. Because especially if you're a small artist and you do have a book, if you don't necessarily have like a following for it, it'll be harder to market. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
selling it or something, you know?
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a really brilliant point, Mina, about the it's easy to make the art digitally, but it can be for the platform. There's some difficulties with how you're posting it. Ayinde, you mentioned this as well. What are some other difficulties that have come up with you posting your comics in a digital format versus maybe going a traditional route, or even the platforms that you're posting it on? Any difficulties there?
I would say some of the difficulties when it comes to posting digitally is, for me, is that before you actually post it, you need to make sure that it's good, because once you upload it, you're not going to be able to get that copy necessarily taken down. Unlike a physical book, you can just take it away, but I've uploaded artwork I accidentally like didn't finish. I was like, "Oh no, I didn't mean to post that one." And I look at it and then I'm like, "Oh no, people have already looked at it, probably like screenshot it." You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And now I can take it down, but the other version. As a matter of fact, I have people posting some artwork of mine like on Pinterest, and I see like a mistake, and I'm like, it was an accident, you know, but I can't take it back, you know, because once it's out there in the digital world, you know, you can't kind of take it back. So,
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most annoying aspects of digital is just kind of like making sure that before you click upload, everything is correct, because then you
right,
have, if it's not, you got to jump through so many hoops to try and get it taken down. It depends on the platform. Some
right,
are a little bit easier than others, but like I remember on Webtoon, I think we had, they have all those formatting rules on the
hmm,
sizing for the pages, and making sure like your thumbnails look correct when you upload your thumbnails. So all of that can get a little, it's like all the little things
right. The
just to
little
get
nitpicks of
one
it.
page uploaded. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably the most annoying part of doing it
Hmm.
digitally, is just all those little things that you gotta make sure are correct before you actually upload it. So
Another thing that I don't like is that sometimes these platforms servers do not upload your work in the quality that you upload it at.
yeah.
You know, like for example, webtoons, like a lot of times when I upload my artwork, I upload it at like a very high quality, and then when I see it like formatted on the actual platform, it's kind of like grainy, or and I'm like, what in the world? I put this like PNG or something, you know what I'm saying? Format, by the way, that's a image format for those who don't know. That's another thing. I hate that. I hate it when even like not just webtoons, but other places like Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
You look at the quality of the work that you just uploaded, and I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, I'm sure we're probably going to get into marketing, but the way that you have to format everything for a specific platform,
Yeah,
is
that can
is a lot of
be.
extra work.
Hmm. Actually, yes, we are about to. That's another big part of webtooning. Is I'm not sure if we have made it in this part of the day, but someone had said, I can't remember who, that a lot of people will choose, digital. Actually, in Ayinde, you said this as well. digital uploading your comics digitally is a form of marketing. It's a form of exposure, getting your name, getting your style out there so that people can recognize it. When it came down to marketing yourself, do you think that it is a little bit more difficult to market a digital product like a digital comic than it is to market a physical book? Or would you say that you're using your digital book to market a physical product? How do you guys kind of approach marketing in that sense?
I would say that when it comes to marketing yourself or your comic digitally, I think it is difficult in the digital art world, excuse me, because there is a bit of like oversaturation. There are so many artists creating comics or a small series. Sometimes, especially with the algorithms and everything like that, I mean, you can literally kind of disappear. So you know what I'm saying? So it has everything to do with consistency and you like making sure you have a dedicated following, of people who will support you and whatnot. I would say that's one of the biggest things you have to do is create the dedicated followers and fans who will, those are the real, MVPs, you know what I'm saying? So that's one of the difficulties.
Yeah, you mentioned consistency. That's like a huge part of making sure that you stay relevant, as
Right.
you know, in a sea of, we're kind of in an age where everybody's uploading their own work. Everybody is, which is great, right? You want all these people to have the confidence to post their stuff and
Right.
try to gain exposure for themselves and create their own followings. But at the same time, everything has an algorithm. All the different
Mhm.
platforms have their own algorithms. Google, is its own monster, right?
Mhm.
Conquering SEO and all the little marketing aspects to make sure that your stuff appears when people search your series.
Mhm.
So that's completely different from like if you've got a physical copy of your work and you're just going to more these little like more contained events, very smaller, rather than just uploading it straight to the internet. You have a higher chance, I feel like, of people of creating a dedicated fan base, and because at the very least people get to see you face to face and
Mhm.
interact, and it's more personable and personalized when you have yourself actually handing them what you've been working on, and it's physical and they can hold it in their hands, which is why we do physical copies in addition to digital, because I feel like
Right.
digital, they're two completely different animals, right?
Right.
So keeping up the digital side is cool, but then I think it is important to have a physical copy available. I know it's not necessarily feasible for a lot of artists because it does cost money.
Yes.
It's an investment to have physical products,
Mhm.
especially if you do start to, be consistent and gain a fan base. People expect those physical copies, and then if you're out of
Right.
stock, then it's like, oh well, now you're not making any money. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
there's so many different aspects to doing both of them, but digital is, as far as like marketing is,
Yeah, the
we
marketing
actually
part's
hired
really important.
somebody. We hired somebody to do our marketing. So we have somebody specifically just to help us out with marketing, because it's running all the different social media platforms.
Right.
Like I said, Google doing the SEO and all that kind of stuff. It's like,
It's a
man,
lot.
it's a lot. Yeah.
Yes. Like the physical copy, just like you said, that part right there with your fan base is looking at it digitally is one thing, but being able to actually own the media and actually physically have it is like, wow, it is a completely different experience, especially with me. I like manga and stuff like that myself. So, being able to see, as well as being able to see, like, especially if it's a series and if the artist is independent, you also get the opportunity to see the progression of their style. Because sometimes as the artist grows, their style changes. I know that I speak for myself when it comes to that. Because, for example, when I first did my first adult manga, my art style was like different from what it is when I made my second one.
Mhm.
So a lot of my fans were like, "Oh, I see the difference from your style." You know what I'm saying? And it's so intriguing to see that of the artist. At least that's how I feel, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we when we first started out, my like if you compare chapter one of God Punch to like even just like Blade Titans chapter one, or even I mean with the upcoming chapters that are about to release for the like this, it's a completely different. You can see the
Right.
growth. You can see it chapter to chapter. Really, what between one and
Mhm.
two, there was a jump, and then the two to three was a bigger jump. So
Right.
I think instead of I think that's one thing that's fun about the the hard copies and like just kind of not waiting until something is complete to put it out
Mhm.
there is you know people get to own those individual pieces like the
Right.
steps in the
Mhm.
process of becoming you know um professional, I guess, you know, because you can say that you're professional, but you're really kind of amateur in the space.
Mhm.
But you know, once you've it's cool for your fans to actually be like, hey, I own, you know, chapter one of this
Right.
series, right? And even if it gets redrawn later, which we do plan to do, like with some of our series, is kind of go
Oh,
back
I'm
and,
doing the
and
same
do a
thing.
redraw, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Then it's kind of like well, I get to really it really feels like a collector's item, right? Because it looks completely different.
Right.
Like this is the original, you know? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes, I was actually telling my fans that, and I was like, I'm gonna be redrawing like my first adult manga, and they were like, "Oh wow, I can't wait!" You know, I have like your first one, so
Mhm.
I have like the magical original one. You know, it
Right.
does actually add speciality to it. That's why
Mhm.
having the physical, because you know, sometimes when you go like, for example, on Instagram, you'll see artists that you've been following for a while, at least for me, and you notice sometimes that they get rid of like all their old stuff
Right.
because their style has upgraded, they've changed, you know. But sometimes I'm like, dang, I really like those old sketches or something like that. But luckily, some of the artists I got their art books, so when they had them available, so I'm like, wow, I remember they drew like this. It was so cool, blah blah blah, you know?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about digital is you know, the versus you don't own anything when it's digital, right?
Right.
I mean, you can some in some ways, you know, some people they do like the downloadable PDFs and stuff like that, which you
Hmm.
actually just buy it. But even then, like if you lose it, you may lose access. You need a password to get it or something like that. Then you don't
Right.
really own it at the end of the day, you know. Versus if it's on your shelf, you know, you can just go pick it up whenever you want. So yeah, and nothing ever stays up on the internet forever. Sometimes, you know, people are like for us, for example, with chapter one through three of God Punch. Like eventually, we're gonna take those down and put the redrawn versions up there because there's only so much server space, right? That you
Right.
can't just keep everything up there indefinitely.
Right.
Versus, you know, like I said, having the hard copies, you got it on the bookshelf, right? So
Right.
yeah.
I'm glad that you bring that up. It's a very interesting concept of being digital artists, being digital creators, posting everything online. I feel like for a lot of people, they think of digital web comics as kind of like forever green. Like you know, you can always go up to web comics or webtoons or wherever you post them. But I think you bring up a really good point that if the app goes down that it's being hosted on, or if the creator takes it down, you know, sometimes you can make a mistake and someone might screenshot it, but there's a lot of times that if you post something digitally, it just kind of becomes lost media if you never have like a physical copy. With that being said, is there a need? Do you feel like there's a need to, for preservation's sake, to post your comics in different places so that your audience has an opportunity to read it in different areas? Or would you say that for you personally, there's kind of this idea that if you make something digitally, that eventually you might get a physical copy?
Um, I would say that, in my opinion, I do like the idea of posting it various different places. Um, like I said, we used to do Webtoon, and we have it. It's still up there on Webtoon. The first 3 chapters. We're just not uploading past that, on
Mhm.
Webtoon. Um, we didn't have like a it was a Canvas series. It wasn't like an original, so we don't have like a contract, to keep it
Mm,
up there or anything. But um, I do think that having it in different areas is good. There's pros and cons to it because I feel like if it is available in one area, that's kind of like the creating the need to have people come to that specific platform or wherever it is to actually find it. And then it makes your analytics and everything look much better because you don't have it spread out over so many different places. But if that's not necessarily an issue, then I feel like yeah, spreading it out, having it like it's you can read it here, you can read it here, you can read it here. For people that, especially if it's not behind a paywall, if it's behind a paywall, it makes sense to have it on one platform because
mhm,
you want the people to come pay to go to that platform. If it's not, if it's more of a like you can just read it for free, then I think it does help exposure wise. And then like you don't necessarily have to update it on those other places. You can say, yeah, if you want to pay $2, to read the next one now, versus waiting for it to appear on these other sites. I mean, it's just like manga, right? Manga, uh, without getting into like the whole like legal gray area of screen, what do they call it, scans, right,
yeah, scans.
the scans, right. um, there's a difference between reading the real translated version and reading a scan that somebody just put up somewhere, right.
Mm,
So I think it is, and there's like the whole supporting the creator directly versus finding it secondhand somewhere else. um, But in my opinion, I think the exposure is good regardless if it's not losing you money.
mm,
If it is, definitely keep it centralized in one location. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So yeah.
I would agree. If you do have something that you have available for other people to read, I don't see why not put it on maybe multiple. But the only thing that I have to say about putting it on multiple um, platforms like that, like, is keeping up with all the platforms. I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes that can be really difficult to like keep up with this spot's with, So even though yes, it gives you the exposure, sometimes it could be difficult to keep up with all the platforms you have your things on. So that's something to think about.
Mhm.
um, but yes, if it is behind a paywall, I mean, not behind a paywall, excuse me, I would say keeping it on a couple platforms would be good. I don't want people to go. I mean, they people can do what they wish, but having it on 6 to 8 or something, that sounds too crazy.
Yeah.
I can't do that myself. But yes, if you have it available to do that, then do that. If you have a behind a paywall like Patreon or something like that, or something else I can't think of right now, definitely keep it contained.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think you both bring up a really good point about and honestly it didn't even occur to me what digital comics be in Patreon or Ko-fi or some kind of like personal platform. Um I'm not sure if you guys can speak to this, but what are your perceptions of digital comic book creators putting their comics behind the paywall? So instead of just like you can kind of go and read it for free, maybe you have to pay a fee to the first couple are free, or maybe that first 60 pages is free, whatever the case is, and then the remainder you'd have to pay for. What are your perceptions about it? Have you ever earned any revenue via this way of kind of putting out your comics?
I personally haven't earned any money from using that when it comes to like my my romance that I have, which is my mutual crush that I have on webtoons and Tapas. But of course, for my adult hentai manga that I have, I do have that behind a paywall, and I only have it available physical copy. So if someone does want to continue to read it, I do have it like on my website where you can read at least like, I don't know, maybe like 9 pages of it or so, just to get yourself all like trapped into it. But after that, you want to keep reading, you gotta pay.
Yeah, I
Mm,
think it's important to have some kind of um, free portion of it to get them interested.
Right.
I think most platforms nowadays kind of do that. Even the like Shonen Jump app and stuff, you can read maybe like the first 3 chapters or something like that, and then after that,
Hmm.
you have to actually pay. Um, so we've kind of been doing our model is we have the hard copies available only for like the first month, and then after that, the digital copy drops specifically on our website. So that's kind of like incentivizing people to, if you really want it right now and you want to support us, buy it. Like you get to have the hard copy. If you want to
Right.
just read it when it becomes available, then you can just wait an extra month for it to come out. But I think if you have a pretty dedicated fan base, you benefit from the paywall because it's not really an issue for people. They want to support you, and they know that that's kind of the way to support you is to buy the hard copies, or you know if it's digital only, to pay to actually access the content. Because once they've become like a fan, they're not going to be turned away by paying $5 or whatever to read your
Right.
stuff.
They're
You
not
know what
going to
I'm
be
saying?
turned away.
It's not a big deal. So um, I think eventually we may get to the point where we have to put some of our digital stuff behind a paywall as well. But it just depends. It's I think that's a conversation to have about the pros and cons of being like an independent creator versus having your stuff in a magazine or with a company that's actually paying you
Mhm.
to create your content, because it's not really it makes more sense to have stuff behind a paywall when you're an independent creator and you're not
Right.
bound by contract and getting paid a certain amount to create these chapters. It's a lot of hours of work to
Right.
put out the content, and I think people that understand that know it's like it doesn't phase them to pay $5 to $10 or whatever to read your stuff. So
right.
Right.
And for the audience who's not really familiar with what we mean by independent contractor versus someone who has a contract, for a lot of creators in this space, specifically, if you're not under a major publisher, so if you're into comics, that would be like Marvel or DC. If you're more into manga, that's going to be your Viz Media or your Shonen Jump, Shueisha. These companies, what they'll do is they will contract out artists or contract out creators to exclusively release their books or their properties through them. That's how they do that publishing. That's how they kind of earn money that way. But when you're an independent person, outside of a contract, you have to kind of find new and creative ways to monetize your product if that's what you choose to do with it. So that's kind of what they're talking about paywalls. Um, but a aspect of that I will tap into, because you're definitely right. I think there's a conversation to be had about how to be an independent creator, and it's its own panel. um,
Mhm.
but you guys both mentioned this on multiple times throughout our conversation is the importance of having an audience. In you guys' personal experience, what was that process like, or do you have any tips for building a following behind your product or just behind you as a creator?
I think that one of the biggest things when it comes to building a fan base of your work, again, just like we said in the beginning, um, would be consistency. Making sure that you are putting your works out there. The fan base has to be built from seeing your artwork, seeing your style, even if you experiment with different mediums. Um, just the consistency of building that fan base, that way is like one of the most important things that you have to do. You can't like, especially when you're just starting, you can't just post like a month. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. But you guys know what I'm talking about. You have to, keep showing your work, keep coming to the door for your fan base in order to be paid.
Yeah, no, that's literally like the number one thing. Building an audience requires consistency. We were fortunate enough to be somewhat consistent in the beginning with our first series, God Punch, kind of like putting that out there, and consistently marketing, being active on the platforms that you're posting your stuff on. So social media was our best friend when we started. We didn't have a website yet. We like the way that we started was specifically through Twitter, and I think a little bit on Instagram, but mainly Twitter. We created an account. We were posting even on our personal accounts about whenever we would drop a chapter, when we had some promo art to post here and there, and interacting with the people that were actually buying the product. Not just being um, kind of in the cloud somewhere. They
Right.
don't
You
they don't
post and
you
you
don't
ghost.
ever you post and you ghost. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
They never actually get to talk to you or see that you're not a AI,
Right.
behind your account. So it's important. I think it builds your fan base faster to know that you're a real person creating
Right.
the content and you have your own personality and everything, and you're passionate about what you do, and people get to actually see that firsthand. So the consistency is important. The actually interacting with your fan base is important. And also I think it's pretty important to make sure that when you're uploading your stuff that like you keep it in a centralized location, and you're kind of like the updates are
Right.
consistent on like, hey, the next chapter's coming out on this platform. Like when we
Yes.
were working on Webtoon, that was very easy because it was like, okay, they get the notification because it's an app. We're not handling all of that, right?
Yeah,
But now that
they
it's
do that.
yeah, they do that, right? When it's uploaded, they get the little bar at the top of their phone that says, hey, next chapter's out, right?
Right.
When you're not using a platform like that handles the marketing side, basically, um, like we are posting on our website now we have to tell people, right? We have to be
Right.
consistent and transparent about, hey, next chapter's coming out here on make sure your links are not broken, make sure like
Oh,
there's a
yeah,
lot of
that's
like
another thing.
like making sure that everything works properly so that people, when they click
Right.
on it, they can actually read it and it's not like we're getting scammed because
Right.
so yeah,
Or it's just not working. Like maybe you didn't put the whole link there because you
yeah,
were rushing. So then when they click on it, they get the 404 page or something. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Um, we've talked a lot about a lot of just in general some pluses and some minuses, some pros and cons to doing things digitally exclusively. But more, if we could more clearly define, what are some of your favorite aspects of being digital creators or for posting your comics digitally?
One of the things that I appreciate and about digital, especially with me being traditional first on myself, is when coming into doing digital artwork versus traditional, you have a lot more time available for you to be able to create your works. Not saying that it won't take time, but it's a lot easier to do it digitally than traditionally. I would also say that digital also gives you the ability to fix a lot of your mistakes very easily because of the fact that you're using an art program versus colored pencils, and you have to have cotton paper and then maybe ink. If you mess that, for example, traditional painting up, you have to start all over again most of the time. But at least digital allows you to be able to render and fix your artworks. I mean, him and I were just talking about re-illustrating our old comics. That would be very difficult, but it's possible, but it would take much longer if it was just physically only. You know what I'm saying? So having the ability to be able to make almost in a way endless changes to your digital works is one of the biggest bonuses of it being digital.
Yeah, no, the ability to hit that Control Z, the undo
Yeah,
button,
right. The
that's yeah.
undo.
Can you like? I know this is probably something that every person who works digitally and traditionally has experienced is when you've been working digitally so long that you go back to working on something on paper and your fingers hit this Control Z
Right.
ghost on your ghost
Like
keyboard,
like
or
you're
your
looking
button.
for the undo button.
Yeah, and
Like
it's not
I've done
there.
that.
And it's like, oh, I have to actually use the eraser or I have to
Mm,
use the whiteout. Like
or you're
that
just like, dang, I can't fix
I
it at
can't do
all.
it. I can't fix it. It's screwed up. So,
Right.
yeah, I think definitely the ability to have like multiple layers. The ability to just
Yes.
completely clear something out instead of having to erase
Right.
it. There's a lot of, and I mean when digital was first introduced, right, as a medium for creating comics, there was definitely a distinction between like a clear distinction between work that was done digitally and work that was done traditionally.
Mhm.
Nowadays it's basically impossible to tell
Right.
at a
To tell.
if you're at a skill level high enough to be able to work um it basically the same, like your style is replicated traditionally and digitally.
Mhm.
Keep it one to one basically. Nobody can really tell the difference.
Right.
At the end of the day, I mean, I've been working with Clip Studio since it was Manga Studio, you
Mm.
know, um, and there's a clear difference in just the way that the pen works on the screen and creates strokes and stuff nowadays. Like the
Right.
technology has just gotten so much better that there's not really a con to working digitally versus traditionally. And I mean, the money that it costs to buy all the supplies traditionally, replenishing supplies. I used to love Copic markers. Copic markers
Oh
are,
my goodness, those
like
are expensive.
expensive, exactly. Now you can have there's programs that have the Copic library, embedded in them.
Right.
You can just click a color and use it, and it works the same way. The technology is there. So I used to say, yeah, traditional, there's definitely benefits. Now I feel like unless you just really miss working on paper or whatever surface that you were comfortable with working on, there's not really a con to working digitally anymore. It's cheaper. The entry level tablets are not as expensive as they used to be.
No.
You can get into digitally. The entry level is so low for digital
Right.
nowadays. It's very affordable and it's easy to learn.
Well, I would say that well, just to jump on what you were last saying about the openness of how the manga art world has literally just kind of melded from digital and traditional where you can't even tell. Just as you said, just to add what I was thinking, they've added so many like textures and everything like that that even when you're looking at the artwork, it can even look like it's on paper,
Right.
with the textures and everything that they use to make the manga artwork, the textures of the digital pen settings and stuff that they do have for the programs. You can make it look like paper. You can make it look like it's on cotton paper and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But even though I am a digital artist, I will say there still are rewards to a traditional. I will say that traditional taught me how to focus intensely on what I was doing when it comes to artwork. When you do digital, you kind of don't get that experience because you can just press undo and you can just fix it. But with traditional, you have to focus. You have to focus on your strokes. You have to focus on how much, you know, medium you're using, whether it's watercolor, acrylic. You have to pay attention to the amount of water or ink. So even though it's not as convenient as digital, I do think that traditional still is rewarding for artists to imbue and try. It's different, and I feel it's rewarding.
Yeah, I think there's definitely there's still no comparison between working
No.
traditionally and digitally. I mean, yeah, there's I know that there's some technology out there where you can like draw on paper and your stuff gets transferred over to the screen, stuff like that,
Mhm.
which is really cool for people that may be more inclined to want to work on like paper and stuff like that. So I think that's something that I've always been interested in. I haven't ever bought one of those, but I keep bookmarking them because I'm like, eventually I'm going to get one, because I do miss. There's nothing like putting a pencil, like a traditional pencil, to paper, or a
Right,
paintbrush to a canvas. Like the working physically with a medium versus a digitally replicated version of that is a completely different experience, and
right,
the feeling is different.
right,
Like you said, it is more rewarding. I feel like to create a painting on a canvas versus doing a painting in Photoshop, for example.
right.
Um, and I don't think that's anything that will change just because digital continues to evolve. I don't think it'll ever replace the feeling of working traditionally.
Right. I remember the last time I participated in Inktober was I think 2022. And I know that there was some controversy going on with Inktober. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was like something going on with it. I don't remember exactly, but I had a lot of fans like asking me why I still like some people were asking me why I still do Inktober traditionally. Like why do I still get the inks and my watercolors? And I said, I explained to them that even though digital is just again so convenient where you can just literally create something, the hands messed up, you don't have to redraw the whole dang thing. You could just crop that off and you know what I'm saying? You know how digital is. But I just feel like traditional is just so much more rewarding than just the fast paced, quick, easy digital, you know. And when you're done with that painting, I feel so proud, that I was able to finish it and be able to put it in a frame and show my family. A lot of my family members, for example, aren't into the online stuff. So when they see my works and my paintings, they usually see it on the walls. So they're like, "Oh wow, you did that, this, that, the third." And it to me, the feeling is much more rewarding because I push out digital media like this,
Hmm.
but having to actually take the time to focus and everything like that and all the hard work you put into traditional is, I feel, a lot really mentally and spiritually rewarding to an artist.
Definitely, I would agree. I think some of my most like proud artistic moments are when I was still doing painting, like in college. I created a couple of pieces. Like I made the canvases because they made us make
Mhm,
our own canvases from
mhm,
scratch. Um, and that process versus like if I had just tried to make that stuff in Photoshop or something, for example, like there would be no comparison to how it would feel being able to hold it up. And also, I think to your point, like having it on a wall and stuff like that. Sure, you can do that with like prints, but that's the thing. Like traditionally,
excuse me.
there's one version, right? You've only made
Right,
that's the only one that exists. You can't make copies of it unless you actually made them by hand,
right,
versus digitally, you can just, make a copy immediately, right? And somebody
right.
can have it. So that there's that level of like uh authenticity and like
Mhm.
kind of like
Yeah.
it's more special to
Hmm.
have it on hand. And of course, that's the again, I feel like the difference even between reading your stuff digitally and reading it physically, right? Having a hard
Hmm.
copy is even if they are printed in mass, there's those little imperfections in the paper. There's the being able
The
to actually like
textures.
the texture and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's a completely different feeling versus pulling it up on your phone or pulling it up on your computer and just scrolling.
Mm.
Right. I've had fans that I've made prints of like my traditional works, and I've had fans who are like, it it doesn't look the same as the picture. You know what I'm saying? Like when you take the picture and you can see like the textures or the raised painting on the paper. And, you know, I have sold some of my originals and whatnot to really dedicated fans who are like, this painting, I saw the painting, and seeing it actually in person in my hand is like such a different experience than seeing it on my phone, you know?
Right.
Absolutely. It's clear that you guys are so incredibly dedicated to the art form of creating art, and I think that that's a really big piece that I think that's a theme that's been throughout this entire day, is that, you know, creating comics, creating manga, art, even if whether you're the artist who's physically drawing or you're the writer who's writing the story. We definitely don't do this for the money. Not to say that we don't intend to be profitable, or we don't intend to make money, but there is a love here. We have a love for the craft of making comics and manga. One final question here, specifically for the digital space, making comics as webtoon artists, as webcomic creators. If you were to give some tips to new comic creators who are looking to release their works digitally, what tips would you provide them for posting their comics for the first time?
For me, I have like one really big one that I tell everybody who's serious about their stuff, and if, especially if you plan to make money off it, or you know, sell it anywhere, or make consistent content, is if your stuff is not protected online, then people will steal it. That is, especially and especially nowadays. You know how big AI is with all the, you know, generating art and all that kind of stuff, and that whole thing. So making sure that your stuff is protected. You know, you taking the steps to, if you're serious like we are about creating comics or something like that, and you've got like a logo for your series, get your logo trademarked, get your stuff copyrighted. You know, those little things will help you in the long run, especially if you plan to continue as an artist with a brand or an IP. Um, so yeah.
Yes, I would agree that protecting your intellectual properties and your creations are very important. You never know what, especially if it's uploaded digital, it's going to be seen potentially by hundreds of thousands of people. You never know who might be like, oh, I want to take this, especially if you haven't gone through not just the protecting your IP, but also just doing what you have to do to get yourself more recognized as an artist, which also helps when it comes to your protection, because you will have fan bases that will let you know that somebody else got your stuff. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but I have. So it's important to take those steps to protect your artwork. Let me see, something else. As we have said several times, it is important to stay consistent. I think that's something that needs to be said again, because I have to say that's one of the hardest things to do, is to stay consistent when it comes to your style as an artist, as well as just working at it. It's not easy, you know. I would also suggest to continue to always study anatomy, composition, everything of those when it comes to artwork. Um, Always be in a place of learning so that you can learn and you can grow. Um, One of the biggest tips I give artists who ask me for help is that you have to be open to get critiques, which means that if you really want and you're serious, you need to have someone reach out to like one of your favorite artists, potentially ask them for a critique, and an honest one. I understand sometimes somebody telling you that your anatomy isn't the best, but it's the truth and it helps you learn and grow. So I've noticed a lot of artists will come to ask me like for a critique, and then I will let them know I'm going to give them my honest opinion. And sometimes they might feel like I'm attacking them. and I'm not. I'm just trying to help you grow. You can only grow in an honest environment. So that's one of a big tip for a growing artist when it comes to manga or just artwork in general.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I would also say that being your finding a balance between being your biggest critic and also giving yourself props where it's due
Right.
is a very tough balance to maintain, right? It's very easy to be too hard on yourself and think nothing is perfect, everything is trash that you
I,
put out. It's you know, it's like so common for artists.
you can be your worst enemy.
You can be your worst enemy very easily. So give yourself props where it's due. If you're growing as an artist, just know like that's part of the process, right? Is you're not going to be perfect out the gate. You're always
Right.
going to be always, like you said, always be in a place of learning, studying, studying those who are masters, studying just by practicing. Um, and staying consistent at all of those different things. Staying consistent with practicing, staying consistent with dropping your content. I think one of the biggest things is, and this is something that I had to learn when I was first putting out my work, is um, not being a perfectionist, basically,
Right.
right? You will never release anything if you are a perfectionist. Like
Right.
you will nothing will ever be good enough for you to put out. And you will be
Already
like
know.
having all of this work that you've done and no one will see it because you don't think it's good enough for people to see. And
Right.
I think it's important for people to see all of those aspects or those different milestones of your progression as an artist, because it's important for other people as well who are getting into the field to see that, because a lot of people, there's a barrier there, for a lot of artists, because they think, well, there's it feels like it's easy for these people that have already gotten there. They
Right.
don't get to see the hard work that comes, to get to that point.
They didn't
And
see the
so
journey.
they didn't see the journey. And I feel like that's one of the biggest pros of digital, or of the digital media, is you can immediately post something and a million people will see that, or
Hmm.
however many people will see it. So versus like traditionally they'd have to go to an art show or they'd have to go to a
Right.
gallery or something like that. Now you can see every step of the process if you so choose to put it on the internet.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing for a lot of growing artists and artists that lack that self confidence to see, that everybody started somewhere,
Right.
and they grew to get to that, where they are now.
Right.
Absolutely. I think you guys bring up so many wonderful points about, well, at this point, just the creative process, that being a consistent learner, always making sure that you're realistic with yourself and set honest expectations for improvement, but also trying to be yourself, try to be your biggest cheerleader. If you put something out, being proud of that, not stifling your own hard work by trying to over perfect because we're always growing. Amazing tips, truly. And with that, I think that is our time for this evening, for today. Thank you guys so much for your time. I'm so thankful I got the opportunity to speak with you guys. You guys are truly just wise beyond your years. But oh yeah, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to add one more thing, if I could.
Yeah, of course.
Which for the tips, just I know it's difficult, especially with all these different artists that are amazing. But always remember to not compare yourself to others. Your journey is your journey. It's not their journey. It's not that other one's journey. Your journey is your journey. I know it's difficult. I know it's hard, but stay focused on your journey and you will get far.
Period. Yes, that is so true. And since you signed us off with some amazing words of wisdom, do you mind letting us know where we can find you on the internet, and then of course Ayinde, you as well?
Absolutely. So again, my name is Gillyboo online, and my name is Mina. You can find me on Instagram. I also have my small business Chinchira, where I sell all my goodies that everybody can get. And you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Blue Sky, as well as Pinterest. And I also have my webtoons, Mutual Crush. So check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And YouTube too.
Yeah, for me, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Kokujin Creates, Kokujin Creates, but with a K, all one word. You can check out. We have a link tree in the bio of like all those, so that
Yes.
has even more ways to find the products and stuff. If you want to find the website, it's Studio Maho, maho.com. We also have social media accounts for that as well. Should be just Studio Maho or official Studio Maho on Instagram and Blue Sky. And yeah, so YouTube as well, obviously, because we have
Yes, you
animation, right? We forget about YouTube when you're not uploading as much
do.
on there, but
Mhm.
we will be uploading more on there. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys again for your time. Thank you guys for watching yet another panel here on Ink and Panels. Stay tuned because there's more where that came from, and we'll see you next time.